The station lights flickered the moment she stepped aboard. And by her first morning jog, the entire station was seconds away from collapsing. I have been working maintenance on Celestis Station for nearly 8 cycles now, and I have seen just about every species the galaxy has to offer walk through those docking bay doors. Phyxians with their crystalline exoskeletons, Vorlines who float more than walk, even a Krillevian ambassador who had to duck through every single doorway because their species apparently never invented reasonable proportions. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day a human arrived. The docking alert chimed through my compiece, that irritating little triple beep that meant someone new was coming aboard. I was elbow deep, literally elbow deep, in a wall panel on level 7, trying to figure out why the atmospheric recycler kept making a sound like a Brenthe trying to sing opera. Not my idea of a good afternoon. If you want the truth, vacuum monitoring the structural sensors. That was Toss, my apprentice, a kid who jumped at his own shadow and somehow got assigned to station maintenance. Kid had talent though, I will give him that much. Always am. I called back, not bothering to pull myself out of the panel. The sensors were my babies, the delicate network of pressure plates and gravitational monitors that kept Celestis from tearing itself apart. See, the station was not exactly what you would call new. She was old, creaky, and held together with prayers and recycled parts, but she floated in a stable orbit, kept the air breathable, and did not charge too much for docking fees. That made her prime real estate in this sector. We have got an arrival. Human apparently. That made me pause. I pulled myself out of the panel, my 3-fingered hands leaving grease smears on the wall. A human? Here. Toss nodded, his antenna bobbing with the movement. His species, the Prill, were even lighter than us Thenari. He probably weighed about as much as a standard cargo container when it was empty. Lieutenant Sarah Kane, transfer from some Earth military vessel. She is supposed to be our new security liaison. I made my way to the nearest monitor screen, pulling up the docking bay feeds. Sure enough, there she was, the human, stepping off the transport shuttle with a confidence that immediately made me nervous. Humans had a reputation, you understand. They came from a death world, some backwater planet in a yellow dwarf system where apparently everything was trying to kill everything else. I had heard stories, wild stories, stories that seemed too ridiculous to be true, but seeing her walk, really walk with that heavy, deliberate gait, something in my gut twisted. Credits say she does not last 3 days, Brill announced over the station-wide maintenance channel. The hexapod engineer loved his betting pools almost as much as he loved complaining about humans. Species that evolved in high gravity never adapts well to station life. Too used to weight, too used to effort. They get frustrated, clumsy. I will take that bet, Korath rumbled. Our station commander, a massive Krillevian with shoulders wider than some doorways, had a soft spot for underdogs. 5 days. Humans are stubborn. The chatter continued, but I was watching the screens. Lieutenant Sarah Kane was tall for a human, I guessed, with dark skin and hair pulled back in some kind of functional knot. She wore a standard gray uniform that looked almost boring compared to the elaborate gear most species favored, and she was smiling, this easy, relaxed smile, as the docking officer, a nervous Prill named Kess, tried to explain the station layout. Then she took her first step onto the station proper. The lights in docking bay 3 flickered, just for a second, just the briefest moment of instability, but I saw it. More importantly, my sensors saw it. A pressure spike registered across 6 different monitoring points, a tiny earthquake of force that rippled through the deck plating. Did anyone else see that? I asked into the comm. See what? Toss responded. The lights, the flicker. Brill laughed. That clicking, chittering sound his species made when amused. Beck, you have been staring at sensor readouts too long. Your eyes are playing tricks. It is just a human. What is she going to do, break the station by walking? The other maintenance techs joined in the laughter. Good old Vec, they seemed to say, always jumping at shadows, always seeing problems where none existed. But I pulled up the sensor logs anyway, downloaded them to my personal data pad, because here's the thing about being a maintenance technician on a station as old as Celestis. You learn to trust your instruments, you learn to see the patterns, the tiny fluctuations that mean something is about to go very, very wrong. And as I watched Lieutenant Sarah Kane smile at Kess, as I watched her pick up her duffel bag with one hand like it weighed absolutely nothing, as I watched her walk toward the main corridor with that heavy, purposeful stride, every single step registered on my sensors like a small impact event. Nobody else was paying attention. Nobody else cared. They were too busy laughing, too busy making their bets, too busy underestimating what it meant to evolve on a planet with gravity strong enough to crush most of us into paste. But I was paying attention, and I had a terrible feeling that Lieutenant Sarah Kane was about to teach us all a very expensive lesson about physics. The crew lounge on Celesta Station was never what anyone would call elegant, but it served its purpose. Mismatched chairs accommodated at least 15 different body types. The beverage dispensers offered liquids in 7 different gravitational viscosities, and the lighting was kept at a neutral spectrum that did not give anyone a migraine. Usually it was quiet, a place to grab a drink, review reports, maybe complain about the oxygen recycler making weird noises again. Tonight, it was packed. Word had spread fast about the human. I floated into the lounge, my lightweight frame requiring barely any effort to move in the station's low-gravity setting. We Thunari evolved on a world with gravity about 1/3 of galactic standard, which meant places like Celestis felt like home. Most of the crew was similar, light species fragile by some standards adapted to environments where you did not need bones like reinforced steel just to stand upright. Commander Korath occupied his usual corner, his massive frame wedged into a chair that groaned under his weight every time he shifted. Kralivians were the exception on the station, one of the few heavy world species that tolerated station life. Even then, Korath never looked entirely comfortable, always moving carefully, always aware of his own mass. "Thek." "Perfect timing," Brill called out, waving one of his 6 arms in my direction. The engineer was perched on a chair designed for his species, his segmented body sprawled across it like he owned the place. "We are discussing our new security liaison. Tell me, how many structural violations did she commit just walking from the docking bay?" The lounge erupted in chittering laughter. Various species added their own commentary, voices overlapping in the universal language most of us used for station business. "I heard humans have bones made of calcium carbonate," Toss chimed in, trying to sound knowledgeable. The kid was sipping something blue and fizzy that I was pretty sure was not approved for prill consumption. "Same stuff as coral. How does that even support a body?" "Calcium phosphate actually," I corrected, sliding into a seat near the viewport. "With collagen matrices. It is a surprisingly efficient structural system for high-gravity environments." "High gravity," Brill repeated, making that clicking laugh again. "Their homeworld is what? 9.8 meters per second squared. That is adorable. Chorus people handle 12. Humans are barely above galactic standard and they act like they evolved in a black hole." Korath rumbled something that might have been agreement, taking a long drink from a container the size of my head. "They are dense though." Saw her personnel file. 68 kilograms. For something that size. "That is compression. Muscle tissue," someone else offered. "Apparently they are mostly muscle tissue and water. Inefficient design if you ask me." The betting pool had grown since this afternoon. I watched as Brill updated the numbers on a datapad, taking wagers from at least a dozen crew members. 3 days was still the most popular bet for how long Lieutenant Kane would last before requesting a transfer. A few optimists had wagered 5 days. One joker had put down money on 2 hours. I was only half listening, my attention divided between the conversation and my own datapad. I had been reviewing the sensor logs from the docking bay, cross-referencing them with the station's structural integrity monitors. The pattern was there, clear as vacuum, if you knew what to look for. Every footstep had registered. Every single one. Little spikes of pressure that should not have existed, not from something the size of a human, not in the station's reduced gravity environment. "What is the human doing right now anyway?" someone asked. Kess, the docking officer, looked up from his drink. "Last I saw she was heading to her quarters. Said something about settling in and reviewing station protocols. Seemed nice enough actually, very polite." "They are always polite at first," Brill said sagely, like he had ever met a human before in his life. "Then they start trying to fix things that are not broken, or reorganizing security protocols, or insisting we need redundant backups for systems that have worked fine for decades." "To be fair," Korath interjected, his deep voice cutting through the chatter, "our security protocols could use updating. Last inspection flagged us for inadequate response procedures." "See? It is starting already," Brill complained, gesturing dramatically with multiple arms. "The human has been here for less than 4 hours and already our commander is siding with her." More laughter. More jokes. More credits changing hands as the betting pool expanded to include new categories. Would she complain about the gravity settings? Would she request special equipment? How long before she accidentally broke something? I kept my eyes on my datapad. The structural readings were getting weirder. Micro fluctuations in the deck plating on level 3, right where the crew quarters were located. Pressure variations that did not match any known pattern of station movement or gravitational drift. It was almost like the station itself was reacting to her presence. adjusting, compensating, trying to account for a mass distribution it was not designed to handle. Vec, you are being quiet, Toss observed, leaning over to peer at my screen. What are you looking at? I hesitated. The smart move was to say nothing, let it go, avoid being the one who panicked over sensor ghosts, but the patterns were there, undeniable and growing more pronounced. Just checking something, I said finally, keeping my voice neutral. The structural monitors are showing some anomalies. Probably nothing. Old station, old sensors, you know how it is. Always the worrier, Brill said affectionately, raising his drink in my direction. That is why we keep you around, Vec. Someone has to care about the boring details. The conversation moved on, shifting to other topics, other complaints, other gossip, but I could not shake the feeling crawling up my spine, that instinct that had kept me alive through dozens of near disasters on aging stations. Something was wrong. Something about the human, about her mass, about the way she interacted with the station's carefully balanced systems, and nobody was taking it seriously. The first real incident happened at 0600 station time, right when the Gamma shift was transitioning to Alpha. I was in Maintenance Bay 2 running diagnostics on the environmental controls and drinking something that technically qualified as coffee if you were not too picky about definitions. The station was quiet, that peculiar kind of silence that comes right before everyone wakes up and starts demanding things. Then Lieutenant Sarah Kane decided to go for a morning run. I did not know that was what she was doing at first. All I knew was that my sensor board suddenly lit up like a festival display. Alarms pinging across multiple systems simultaneously, pressure spikes in the main corridor, levels 3 through 7, gravitational fluctuation, structural stress indicators jumping into yellow warning zones. What in the frozen void? I muttered, my coffee forgotten as I pulled up the visual feeds. There she was, the human, jogging through the main corridor in what looked like gray exercise clothing, just jogging. A light run by her standards probably, her arms swinging in an easy rhythm. Her breathing apparently unlabored. She looked calm, relaxed, even like this was the most normal thing in the universe. The station disagreed violently. Every footfall sent ripples through my sensors. The lights flickered in sequence as she passed, a wave of instability following her like a shadow. I could hear it through the station's bones, that deep metallic groan that meant structural components were flexing in ways they absolutely should not be flexing. Floor panels creaked. Actually creaked. I watched on the monitors as the deck plating under her feet compressed microscopically with each step, then rebounded, creating a wave pattern that propagated outward through the corridor. Toss, are you seeing this? I barked into the comm. A sleepy groan came back. Seeing what? It is 0600, Vec. Some of us were sleeping. Main corridor, levels 3 through 7, pull up the structural monitors. There was a pause, then a sudden spike of alertness in his voice. What is causing that? Micrometeor impact? Docking clamp failure. The human. She is jogging. Silence. Then, jogging, running, exercise. Whatever her species calls it. Another pause, longer this time. Beck, that is impossible. She weighs what? 70 kilograms? Maybe 80 with equipment. The station is rated for individual loads up to 500 kilograms. There is no way simple footsteps are causing structural stress. But they were. The sensors did not lie, could not lie. They were measuring exactly what was happening, even if what was happening made absolutely no sense according to standard engineering principles. I watched Lieutenant Kane reach the junction near the cargo bay. She paused, did a few stretches that looked like they should dislocate joints, then casually reached up to adjust something on the overhead pipeline, a coolant conduit, frozen in place for weeks because the adjustment valve was stuck and we had not prioritized fixing it. She grabbed it with one hand. Twisted. The valve, which had resisted every tool in our maintenance kit, every application of lubricant and leverage, simply turned, smooth as anything, like it had never been stuck at all. She did not even seem to notice, just made the adjustment, nodded to herself in satisfaction, and continued her jog. Did she just fix the coolant valve on junction 7? Toss asked, his voice climbing into ranges that suggested panic. Apparently. We have been trying to fix that for 3 weeks. I'm aware. Vec, what are we dealing with here? That was the question, was it not? I pulled up every piece of information I could access about humans, their physiology, their homeworld, Earth, gravity 9.8 meters per second squared, atmospheric pressure 100 kilopascals at sea level, a world where the very air was dense enough to crush most species I knew, and humans evolved there, adapted to it. built their entire biological structure around surviving in an environment that would flatten a thinari into paste. She is not heavy, I said slowly, working through the physics, not by mass, but by density, by the way that mass is distributed and applied. Every step she takes is like a focused impact. Her muscles, her bones, everything about her is designed to operate under crushing force. When she moves in our low-gravity environment, all that strength, all that structural integrity, it translates into something we are not equipped to handle. You are saying she is too strong for the station? No, I am saying the station does not understand what she is. Our systems, they are designed to compensate for mass, for weight distribution. But human physiology, it is compression, efficiency, power concentrated into a relatively small package. Every gesture she makes casual takes force we would need mechanical assistance for. Lieutenant Kane had finished her run. I watched her stop near a wall panel, breathing easily, not even winded. She pressed a hand against the wall to stretch her leg muscles. The wall panel cracked, hairline fracture barely visible, but my sensors screamed about it. She did not notice, did not hear the groan of metal, the stress indicators flashing red across my board. She just finished her stretches, smiled at nothing in particular, and headed off toward what I assumed was the shower facilities. I sat in the maintenance bay staring at my screens, watching the red alerts slowly fade back to yellow as the station's systems struggled to compensate. Toss. Yeah? Remember that betting pool about how long the human would last?
Yeah?
I think we are betting on the wrong thing. The question is not how long she will last. I pulled up the damage reports, watching them compile into a list that was already longer than I wanted to see. The question is how long the station will last with her on it. The comm went silent. Somewhere in the distance I heard another creak, another groan of metal adjusting to forces it was never designed to accommodate. Lieutenant Sarah Kane had been on board for less than a day. This was going to be a very long assignment. The cargo bay crisis started, as these things usually do, with someone trying to save time and accidentally creating a disaster instead. A freighter had docked that morning with a shipment of industrial coolant, the expensive kind we needed for the reactor cores. Standard procedure was to use the anti-gravity sleds to move the containers from the cargo hold to storage. Simple, routine. We had done it 1,000 times. Except this time some genius had parked a powered-down maintenance drone directly over the primary generator for the cargo bay's anti-grav field. When the freighter crew tried to activate the system, there was a spectacular shower of sparks, a smell like burning electronics, and suddenly 6 massive containers were sitting in the middle of the bay with no way to move them. Each container was roughly 3 meters long, 2 meters wide, and massed about 800 kilograms. In the station's reduced gravity, that was manageable with the right equipment. Without it, we were stuck. I arrived at the cargo bay to find Commander Korath directing operations, his massive frame towering over a crew of increasingly frustrated technicians. Brill was there too, all 6 arms gesturing wildly as he tried to jury-rig a portable anti-grav unit to handle the load. How long? Korath rumbled, his patience clearly wearing thin. 2 hours minimum, Brill reported, not looking up from his work. The primary generator is completely fried. We need to either fix it or rig enough portable units to distribute the load. These containers are too heavy for manual moving even in low gravity. We would need at least 20 crew members with mechanical assistance, and it would take all day. The freighter captain is threatening to charge us demurrage fees if we do not clear his cargo hold in the next hour, Korath said, his voice carrying that particular tone that suggested someone was going to have a very bad performance review. That was when Lieutenant Sarah Kane walked in. She had been on station for exactly 36 hours at this point, long enough to complete her orientation, review security protocols, and apparently decide that she needed to involve herself in station operations. She wore her uniform, looked professionally neat, and had the kind of expression that suggested she was genuinely trying to be helpful. "Problem, Commander?" she asked, her voice carrying easily across the cargo bay. Korath turned, looking down at her with what might have been surprise. At 2.3 meters tall, he was used to being the largest being in most rooms. Humans, at roughly 1.7 meters, barely came up to his chest. "Equipment failure, Lieutenant. Nothing that concerns security. We have it under control." Sarah walked over to the nearest container, running her hand along its surface. She checked the labeling, the anchor points, the way it was sitting on the deck. "These need to go to cold storage. Level 9. Eventually, yes, once we can move them." She nodded thoughtfully, then walked around the container, examining it from different angles. I watched from my position near the maintenance console, my sensor readouts showing the usual stress patterns from Korath's weight and the mass of the containers. Nothing unusual. Yet, I could move them, Sarah said casually. The cargo bay went quiet. Every crew member within earshot stopped what they were doing. Brill's arms froze mid-gesture. Even Korath looked momentarily confused. I am sorry, what? The commander asked. The containers. I could move them manually. Get them out of the way so the freighter can finish unloading. Then we can take our time fixing the anti-grav system and position them properly later. Brill made that clicking sound that passed for laughter among his people. Lieutenant, those containers mass 800 kilograms each. Even in reduced gravity, that is significant resistance. A human would need mechanical assistance or at least a full exosuit. Sarah smiled. That easy, relaxed expression I was starting to recognize as dangerous. Want to bet? Oh no. Oh no no no. I knew what was coming. I could feel it in my bones and my sensors and every instinct screaming that this was going to go very badly. By all means, Brill said, gesturing magnanimously. Demonstrate. She approached the nearest container, the one positioned most awkwardly in the center of the bay. She bent at the knees, positioned her hands under the lowest edge, and took a breath. My sensors lit up before she even started moving. Pressure indicators spiked. Structural monitors flickered. The deck plating directly under her feet registered force loads that should have been impossible. Then she lifted. The container rose. Smoothly. Steadily. 800 kilograms of industrial coolant in a reinforced shipping container. Lifted like it was nothing more than an inconvenient box. Sarah's face showed concentration. Sure, and there was visible effort in her posture, but she was doing it, actually doing it. The cargo bay filled with the sound of groaning metal, not from the container, from the station itself. Every step she took sent shockwaves through my sensors. The deck plating compressed under her feet. The additional load combined with her own mass creating pressure points that propagated through the station's superstructure. Lights flickered throughout the entire level. The environmental system hiccuped. Fans spinning up and down as power distribution struggled to compensate. Vec, what is happening? Toss shouted through the comm, panic clear in his voice. I am showing structural failures across multiple systems. Are we under attack? The human is moving a cargo container, I replied, unable to look away from my readouts. That should not cause this kind of system disruption.
I know.
Sarah carried the container across the bay, 15 meters of careful walking, and set it down near the storage access, gently, with control. The deck plating beneath it actually dented inward, a visible depression that had absolutely no business existing on reinforced station flooring. She straightened, rolled her shoulders, and looked at Korath. 5 more to go. This should take about 10 minutes. The commander stared at her. Brill stared at her. Every single crew member in the cargo bay stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to outright terror. I finally understood, truly understood what we were dealing with. Human bone density was not just higher than ours, it was dramatically higher. Their skeletal structure was designed to support their body weight against crushing gravitational force. Their muscles were not just strong, they were dense, packed with fibers that could generate force we needed mechanical systems to replicate. And when you took all that strength, all that structural integrity, all that evolutionary adaptation to a high-gravity death world, and you put it in a low-gravity environment, you got someone who could treat 800-kilogram containers like luggage. Lieutenant, Korath said slowly, his voice careful. Perhaps we should wait for the equipment to be repaired. Sarah looked genuinely confused. Why? I am already here. This is faster. The station, it is old. The structural systems are not designed for, he paused, clearly trying to find diplomatic phrasing, for concentrated load applications. I am being careful, she assured him, completely missing the point. She walked back to the second container. My sensors screamed again as she lifted it, my readouts showing stress patterns that were going to give me nightmares for weeks. Vec, Korath said into the comm, his voice tight. How bad is this? I looked at my screens, at the cascading warnings, at the structural integrity percentages dropping in real time. Commander, if she moves all 6 containers, I cannot guarantee the deck plating will hold. We might be looking at a complete floor collapse. Understood. Korath turned to Sarah, who was halfway across the bay with container number 2. Lieutenant Kane, stop. She stopped, container still held, looking back with concern. Sir, put that down. Carefully, we will wait for the equipment. But I can. That is an order, Lieutenant. She set the container down. The deck groaned. Another dent appeared, and I sat in my maintenance station, watching my sensors gradually calm down, knowing with absolute certainty that everything we thought we knew about humans was catastrophically wrong. The cascading failures started 3 hours after the cargo bay incident, And they started everywhere at once. First, it was the environmental controls on level 4. The atmospheric processors went into emergency shutdown, alarms blaring as oxygen levels fluctuated wildly. Then the gravity compensators on level 6 began cycling through random settings, throwing loose objects and unfortunate crew members around like toys. The lighting grid developed a stutter, sections of the station plunging into darkness for seconds at a time before flickering back to life. And then, worst of all, the reactor coolant system started showing temperature spikes. I was practically living in the maintenance bay at this point. My screens filled with more red alerts than I had ever seen outside of emergency drills. Toss was running between systems trying to manually stabilize whatever he could reach. The rest of the maintenance crew was scattered across the station, desperately patching problems as fast as they appeared. This does not make sense, I muttered, pulling up diagnostic after diagnostic. These systems are not connected. There is no single point of failure that should cause this kind of cascade. It is the human, Brill announced over the station-wide channel, his voice sharp with accusation. Ever since she arrived, the station has been falling apart. Her mass distribution is too concentrated. She is breaking our systems just by existing here. Several crew members voiced agreement. The panic was spreading faster than the technical failures, voices overlapping in a dozen languages and dialects, all saying essentially the same thing. The human was the problem. The human needed to leave. The human was going to kill us all. That is not how physics works, I protested. But my voice was drowned out in the chaos. Commander Cora's voice cut through the noise, deep and commanding. All non-essential personnel, return to quarters. Maintenance teams, priority on life support and reactor stability. Lieutenant Kane, report to the command center immediate. I pulled up the tracking monitor and watched Sarah make her way through the station. She moved carefully now, deliberately, clearly aware that everyone was blaming her for the crisis. The journey from her quarters to the command center should have taken 5 minutes. She took 15, pausing whenever systems flickered around her, waiting for stability before proceeding. When she arrived at the command center, I switched my feed to watch the confrontation. Tower stood at the main console, Brill beside him with multiple arms working different controls. A handful of senior crew members clustered around, their expressions ranging from worried to openly hostile. "Commander," Sarah said, her voice calm, professional. "You wanted to see me, Lieutenant. We have a situation. The station is experiencing multiple system failures. The engineering team believes your presence is causing structural stress that our systems cannot compensate for." She nodded slowly, no defensiveness in her posture. "With respect, Commander, that is not accurate." Brill's arms gestured sharply. "The math is simple. Your density combined with kinetic force is creating pressure loads the station was not designed to handle. Every step you take causes structural flex. The evidence is overwhelming." "The evidence shows correlation, not causation," Sarah replied. She walked to the nearest console, her fingers moving across the interface. "May I?" Korath gestured permission. Sarah pulled up the station schematics, overlaying them with system performance data. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency. Someone clearly comfortable with technical systems. "Your structural integrity is fine," she said, highlighting sections of the display. "Look at the actual stress measurements. They are elevated, yes, but well within tolerance. The deck plating damage was cosmetic. Your superstructure is not failing." "Then what is causing the cascades?" I asked over the comm. Unable to stay silent, she looked up at the speaker, acknowledging my question. "Your adaptation systems. They are overcompensating." She pulled up another layer of data, showing the gravitational compensators and environmental controls. The station's automated systems detected the pressure variations from my movement. They interpreted those as structural stress, so they tried to correct for it. I felt something click in my mind. By adjusting gravity fields and power distribution. Exactly. But human physiology does not need correction. We evolved to handle high gravity loads. Your systems kept trying to lighten the environment around me, which threw off the balance everywhere else. Then those corrections triggered secondary compensations, which triggered tertiary responses, and now your entire automated network is fighting itself trying to solve a problem that does not exist. The command center went silent. I pulled up my own data, cross-referencing it with what she was showing. She was right. The structural damage was superficial. The real failures were all in the automated systems, each one trying to adapt to something they fundamentally did not understand. "How do you know this?" Korath asked quietly. Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Because I have seen it before, 3 times actually." Standard stations are not designed for species from high-gravity worlds. Your automation assumes everyone needs assistance, protection, compensation. But humans, she gestured to herself, we do not need lighter gravity. We do not need reduced load tolerances. We evolved on a planet where gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, where atmospheric pressure could crush most species you have on this station, where we had to be strong just to stand up. I thought about that, really thought about it. A world where simply existing required the kind of force we needed machines for, where children grew up carrying loads that would cripple us, where casual movement meant fighting against a constant crushing force every second of every day. So what do we do? Brill asked, his earlier hostility replaced with something that might have been fear or possibly respect. Hard to tell with his species. Sarah turned back to the console. We turn off the adaptations. Tell the station to treat me like a fixed structural element instead of a crew member requiring compensation. Your systems will stabilize once they stop trying to help me. That seems dangerous, Korath observed. More dangerous than cascading system failures? She had a point. Vec, the commander said. You have been monitoring this since the beginning. Your assessment. I looked at my data, at the patterns I had been tracking, at everything I had learned over the past 2 days about what it meant to be human. She is right, Commander. The station is not breaking. It is confused. We tell it to ignore the lieutenant's mass signature, treat her as environmental background, and the automated compensations should stop. Do it. I began entering commands, overriding safety protocols, reclassifying Lieutenant Sarah Kane as structural ballast rather than crew. It felt wrong, borderline insulting actually, but the math supported it. One by one my alerts began clearing. Systems stabilized, the cascading failures slowed, stopped, reversed. The station finally relaxed. And I sat there staring at my screens, understanding for the first time what it really meant that humans came from a world that wanted them dead. They did not just survive it, they mastered it, became so strong, so dense, so powerful, that our technology literally could not comprehend their existence. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. After the immediate crisis passed, Commander Korath called a station-wide briefing. Not optional. Every crew member who could physically attend was crammed into the main conference room, the rest joining via comlink. The atmosphere was tense, a mixture of relief that we were not all about to die and lingering resentment toward the human who had apparently caused the whole mess. Lieutenant Sarah Kane stood at the front of the room beside a holographic display. She looked tired but composed, her uniform still crisp despite the chaos of the past few hours. I owe you all an explanation, she began, her voice carrying clearly, and probably an apology. When I accepted this assignment, I was assured that Celestis Station had hosted heavy world species before. I assumed that meant the systems were properly configured. That was my mistake. Define heavy world, Brill interrupted, his tone still carrying an edge. Sarah tapped the display, bringing up an image of Earth, blue and green, wrapped in white clouds. It looked deceptively peaceful. My homeworld, Earth. Gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Atmospheric pressure at sea level is 101.3 kilopascals. Oxygen concentration is 21% in a nitrogen-rich mixture. I watched the faces around me as crew members did the mental calculations. Saw the moment comprehension hit, expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to outright horror. That is impossible, someone whispered. A Prill engineer, if I remembered correctly. Nothing evolves in that kind of pressure. The gravitational force alone would flatten developing life. And yet, here I am, Sarah said simply. She pulled up a comparison chart, showing Earth next to various homeworlds represented in the station crew. The differences were staggering. For context, Thinari homeworld gravity is about 3.2 meters per second squared. Krulavian is 12.1, which makes Commander Korath's people the closest to human standard in this room. Most species represented here evolved in gravitational fields between 2 and 6. Korath shifted in his seat, his massive frame creaking. Lieutenant, my people consider our homeworld harsh, difficult. We are among the strongest species in known space. You are saying humans routinely operate in environments that would challenge us. I am saying humans evolved in environments that would kill you, Commander. Respectfully. She brought up another image, a human skeletal structure rotating slowly. Our bones are not just dense, they are reinforced with a calcium phosphate matrix that can withstand enormous compression forces. Our muscles are packed with fast twitch and slow twitch fibers in ratios optimized for power generation. Our cardiovascular system operates at pressures that would rupture most species' circulatory organs. Toss raised a tentative hand. How do you even move? If gravity is constantly crushing down with that much force, every action must be exhausting. Sarah smiled. That is the thing. For us, it is not exhausting. It is normal. We do not feel like we are fighting gravity any more than you feel like you are fighting the gravity here. We adapted. Our entire physiology is built around it. She paused, her expression becoming more serious, which creates problems in environments like this station, where gravity is set to accommodate lighter species. To me, everything here feels wrong. Too light, too fragile. I have to constantly remind myself not to use my full strength because what feels like a gentle touch to me might crack a control panel. The room had gone very quiet. I looked at my fellow crew members and saw the same realization dawning on all of them. We had not been dealing with someone who was clumsy or careless. We had been dealing with someone who was holding back constantly, trying not to break everything around her simply by existing. So how do we fix this? Korath asked. We cannot adjust the entire station to Earth's standard gravity. That would kill most of the crew. You do not need to, Sarah replied. But we do need to manually recalibrate the gravity compensators and pressure sensors. The automated systems are configured to adjust for crew members within a certain mass and density range. I fall outside those parameters. We need to expand the tolerance ranges and adjust the response curves, so the systems do not panic every time I walk past. Manual recalibration, Brill repeated, his arms gesturing uncertainly. That requires accessing the primary compensator nodes. Those are in the maintenance shafts with gravity set to 0.5 standard because of clearance issues. Even with mechanical assistance it is challenging work. For you maybe, Sarah said. For me it is just slightly lighter than my morning workout. That was how I ended up accompanying Lieutenant Sarah Kane into the deep maintenance shafts 3 hours later, watching her do things that should have required a full engineering crew and a week of preparation. The primary compensator nodes were buried in the station's superstructure, accessible only through narrow shafts, where the gravity was reduced to prevent structural stress on the delicate equipment. For species like mine it meant floating through using guide handles, moving carefully to avoid bouncing off walls or damaging sensitive components. Sarah just climbed, hand over hand, pulling herself through the shaft with a controlled power that made it look easy. I followed in her wake, using my maneuvering jets, watching her work. Node 7.3, I called out, checking my datapad. Pressure sensor array needs complete replacement. The housing is corroded, bolts are fused. She reached the node, examined it briefly, then simply gripped the housing and twisted. Metal shrieked. The entire assembly came free in her hands, bolts shearing like they were made of clay. Corroded was an understatement, she commented, setting the ruined parts aside. Hand me the replacement. I floated closer, passing her the new sensor array from my equipment pack. She positioned it, threaded new bolts with her fingers and tightened them without tools. Just grip and turn, her hands providing more torque than our powered drivers. How much can you lift? I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. On your homeworld, I mean, she considered while adjusting the calibration settings. Depends on the lift. Deadlift? I can manage about 120 kilograms, not impressive by human standards. I am not particularly strong for my species. 120 kilograms. Nearly twice her own body weight, in Earth gravity. My mind struggled with the physics of that, the sheer muscular force required. You understand why we were frightened, I said quietly. I do, and I am sorry. I forget sometimes that what is normal for me is extraordinary for others. She finished the calibration, tested the response curves, nodded in satisfaction. This should hold. 3 more nodes on this level, then we moved to level 8. We worked for 6 hours moving through the maintenance shafts, accessing areas that would have required full engineering teams for other species. Sarah did the heavy work, literally, while I handled the technical calibrations and programming. We developed a rhythm, an efficiency born from complementary skills. Vec, she said at one point, wedged into a particularly tight access shaft. Thank you for not giving up on me. A lot of crew members did not want to give me a chance. You are competent, I replied, adjusting a sensor. And you saved the station. That earns respect. She smiled at that, visible even in the dim maintenance lighting. Just doing my job, but it was more than that. And we both knew it. She was showing us what humanity really meant. Not the death world stories. Not the rumors and speculation. The reality of a species that evolved to be strong because anything less meant extinction. By the time we finished, the station systems were purring smoothly. Compensators properly configured to handle human physiology without panicking. The crisis was over, and I had gained something I had not expected. Genuine respect for the species everyone had been laughing at just days before. Humans were not fragile. They were not clumsy. They were not going to break under station life. The station was going to have to learn to handle them instead. 2 weeks after what the crew had started calling the gravity incident, Celestis station was running better than it had in years. The manual recalibrations Sarah and I performed had actually optimized systems that had been gradually degrading for cycles. Who knew that having someone strong enough to access the really difficult maintenance areas would be so useful? The crew lounge had a different atmosphere now. Less mocking, more curiosity. Lieutenant Sarah Kine sat at a corner table reviewing security reports, while various crew members found excuses to drift past and strike up conversations. Brill approached her first, 3 of his 6 arms carrying drinks in a gesture that his species used for apology. Lieutenant, I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I made assumptions based on ignorance. Sarah looked up, smiled warmly. Apology accepted, Chief Engineer. No harm done. Well, except to the deck plating, but maintenance assures me that was cosmetic. I snorted from my own table. Cosmetic is generous. You left dents shaped like your footprints. We are calling them character marks now. That got a laugh from the assembled crew. The tension that had been suffocating the station for days finally broke, replaced with something that felt almost like camaraderie. Commander Korath entered the lounge, ducking through the doorway as always. Lieutenant, a moment. Sarah stood, automatically respectful. Sir, I have been reviewing your personnel file more carefully. Your qualifications include structural engineering, heavy equipment operation and emergency response in extreme environments. All things that in retrospect make perfect sense for someone from your world. Earth Expeditionary Force trains us for environments most species find challenging, she confirmed. I would like to formally request that you expand your role beyond security liaison. We could use someone with your unique capabilities in maintenance and engineering operations. Sarah's smile widened. I would be happy to help, Commander. Fair warning though, my idea of routine maintenance might seem excessive to you. How excessive? Korath asked warily. Well, I noticed the docking clamps on Bay 5 are running at about 60% efficiency. They need a full teardown and rebuild. Should take me about 3 days working alone, maybe 2 if Vec assists. Brill made a choking sound. That is a 2-week job with a full crew. For you maybe, she said cheerfully. I had seen this pattern before. Humans apparently did not have the same concept of difficult labor that the rest of us did. What they considered light work would hospitalize most species from sheer exhaustion. Speaking of maintenance, Tuss piped up from near the viewport. Lieutenant, what are you doing? We all turned to look. Sarah had set down her datapad and was on the floor doing what looked like pushing herself up and down repeatedly. Up, down, her arms flexing with mechanical precision. Push-ups, she said between repetitions. 60 so far. Trying to get to 100 before my break ends. I have been slacking on my fitness routine since arriving. Slacking, I repeated flatly. You jog for an hour every morning. You moved cargo containers manually. You rebuilt 3 compensator nodes in a single shift. And you consider yourself out of shape? She paused at the top of a push-up, grinning. Vec, on Earth, this would be a light warm-up. Basic military fitness standards require 200 push-ups, 300 sit-ups, and a 5-kilometer run, daily. I am barely maintaining minimum standards here. The lounge had gone silent again, but this time it was not fear. It was awe. Possibly horror. Definitely respect. Your species is insane, Brill said. But there was admiration in his voice. Our species adapted, Sarah corrected, finishing her set and standing smoothly. You evolved to match your environment. We just happened to evolve in an environment that wanted us dead. And you thrived anyway, Korath observed. We did. And now we are here, trying not to break your stations by accident. She picked up her datapad again, scrolling through reports. Which reminds me, I found 16 more maintenance items that need attention. Most require accessing high-stress areas. I can handle them this week if you want. I pulled up my own task list, looking at jobs that had been marked low priority for months, because they were too dangerous or too difficult for standard crews. With Sarah's help, we could actually clear the backlog. You know, I said thoughtfully. The Thenari Engineering Consortium has 3 stations in this sector. All of them old, all with the same maintenance access problems we have here. I wonder if they would be interested in human consultants. Sarah laughed. Are you trying to rent me out, Vec? I am saying that word spreads fast in maintenance circles. You fixed problems we have been living with for years. In days. With your bare hands. There are going to be requests. Lots of requests, Brill added. I already received 3 inquiries from other station masters asking about our human security liaison and whether she was available for consultation. Toss cleared his throat nervously. I might have mentioned you on a few engineering forums. There is considerable interest in human physiological capabilities. Academic interest, I mean. Sarah looked around the lounge at the faces watching her with new understanding, and something in her expression softened. When I took this assignment, I expected it to be temporary. A brief posting to an out-of-the-way station before moving to something more significant. But you know what? I think I might stay a while. You have good people here, interesting problems, and apparently I am useful. Useful is underselling it, Kureth said. You are extraordinary, Lieutenant. Your entire species is extraordinary. We are just human, she replied. Nothing special. I thought about that. About a species that considered crushing gravity normal, that viewed 800-kilogram loads as manageable, that apologized for being too strong, too dense, too capable. Nothing special. Right. The betting pool had been wrong. All of us had been wrong. The question was never how long the human would last on Celestis Station. The question was how long we could manage without one. As I watched Lieutenant Sarah Kane return to her reports, casually strong, unfailingly competent, adapted to survive on a world that would flatten the rest of us, I realized something important. We had not been laughing at human footsteps because they were weak. We had been laughing because we did not understand what it meant to walk on a world where every step was a fight against gravity itself. Now we knew better. And honestly, I was not sure whether to be terrified or grateful that humans had decided we were worth protecting. Probably both. Definitely both.